Hi guys, welcome back. So I thought this week, instead of painting something new for you, that I'd show you some of the models that I have worked on in the past, because probably if you watch this channel very much, you maybe get the impression that I basically don't paint anything but single models, which is not truly the case. I have painted some full units and even armies before, and I know there's actually a lot of people out there that are kind of curious about that stuff that I've done. They've asked about it a lot. So yeah, I wanted to show you some of that. So keep in mind that all this stuff, I think, was completed before I even ever started this YouTube channel. So it's all a bit on the older side. So basically that means the quality is in general not going to be as maybe high as what I do now, partially because I just wasn't as good a painter when I made most of it, and also just because, as many of you know, when you're painting larger units, we tend to simplify and sort of not paint quite as well for the sake of expediency. So those are both things you want to keep in mind. And this is going to basically represent all the stuff I did in a wargaming scale, so like 28mm, because that's primarily what I'm interested in. I'm just going to give you a background on some of these figures and forces, you know, kind of why I painted them, what I was sort of my idea behind them was, all that kind of stuff. So hopefully that will be interesting to you, both to get a sense of like where I'm coming from as a painter, what my background is, and also maybe give you some inspiration for, you know, projects you're working on as well. Okay, so I'm going to start out here chronologically. This is the first wargaming army that I ever painted. I kind of got into wargaming initially through Jasper. He started getting really interested in Warhammer Ancient Battles back in the day, and he built a Greek army for that game. And after watching him for a while and kind of messing around with his stuff, I got inspired to make my own army, and I built a Hellenistic Force, which is what you can see here. This is probably the result of my work over a period of a year or two, give or take. It isn't an enormous army, but it contains a whole bunch of elite units, like the elephant, hippospis, a companion cavalry wedge, that kind of stuff, which really jacked up the point value in, say, the Warhammer Ancient Battles rule set at any rate. And of course, since Jasper was playing with the Greek force, it was also really, really easy to mix and match the two armies to create sort of other variants that you could also play with under different situations. I think I was really attracted to the Hellenistic army, not just because it worked well with what Jasper had already created, but also because there's so much diversity and flexibility. You can really mix and match a lot. Like I said before, there's tons of different interesting units from all over the Mediterranean world, and you can kind of switch them out and really customize your army and change it for different situations. You're not really locked into a few very limited choices. And you get to play with some really weird, cool stuff like elephants, and there's a lot of elite units, and just as a painter, the figures are also really cool because you've got a lot of bright, interesting colors, really gaudy armor, just a lot of things that make it a whole bunch of fun to put together. The vast majority of the models in this army are by Wargames Foundry. There are other things in there, I just honestly can't remember off the top of my head where they come from. As far as painting style goes, you can see I'm not really that advanced yet. I'm basically using sort of a three-color layering style a la Kevin Dallimore, basically, for most of my painting here. And I'm working almost exclusively with the Wargames Foundry paint triads, which is what I used when I started on this channel, if you watch any of my earlier videos. But I've since kind of evolved away from that. And there are no real advanced painting techniques here for the most part, so not very much with blending or anything like that. Though you can see already that I've started with doing a lot of freehand work, so you don't really see any decals or anything like that. I've painted all my flags and shields and stuff by hand, and I basically continue to do that now. So the next army I built was my force of German Panzergrenadiers. This was done pretty much right after I started working for Wargame Soldiers and Strategy magazine, we did an internal project called Project Platoon, where the staff members all built their own World War II armies and then blogged about it. And so this was my contribution, and then we also tested them out with various rule sets that had come out around that time, like Bold Action, and this army was sort of definitely built with a focus on the Bold Action rule set. So as to why I chose the Panzergrenadiers for this World War II army, I think it's mostly because I just really liked the way they looked, and, you know, as a painter, aesthetics are one of the sort of my top priorities when, you know, doing anything. So it had a lot less to do with their qualities in an army and their playability, and a lot more to do with just the fact I liked them. I liked the aesthetics of the uniform. I liked the colors. I liked that you could do this stuff with camouflage, and it just made it seem like a much more, at least from a painting perspective, much more interesting challenge than what you had with, say, the Brits or the Americans. So most of the models for this army come from either artisan or warlord. You can see my painting technique here is starting to get more sophisticated. I'm working a lot more with washes, starting to do blending on the uniforms, using edge highlights to add in a lot of sort of contrast and, you know, emphasis on the models, and really refining how you can paint camouflage. I got a lot of practice with the splinter pattern here. You can see these SS guys. I actually painted them later. So you can maybe tell that my painting technique has shifted here from how I had painted some of the earlier models. And as far as the tank and half-tracks go, they were probably my least favorite part of the whole project because armor has just never been one of my strengths, and I don't really enjoy it a lot, but I think I probably achieved decent results, all things considered. Now, these next models I painted for use with the Muskets and Tomahawks rule set, which is sort of for the period of the American War of Independence / the French and Indian War. It's by Studio Tomahawk, and I wanted to do sort of a small force of Hessians that I could use for this game. You really don't need many for this rule set. By the way, it's a skirmish level game. It's a good thing I didn't need too many because I really developed a love-hate relationship with these 18th century uniforms. To be fair, the reason I chose Hessians in the first place because I liked their fancy, cool uniforms, and that attracted to them as a painter, but they turned out to be a real pain in the ass. I think all the models in this army are by Perry Miniatures. When I was putting it together, I didn't see a lot of reason to look around because they have such a good range for this period. My painting here is about at the same level that I had when I did my World War II army. I'm still doing simplistic blending, but relying pretty much exclusively on the Foundry triads for my shadow, mid-tone, and highlight colors. One big innovation here is I figured out how to make sort of glue and rice paper painted flags for the first time. You can see that in my unit of Hessian regulars. And that was a great sort of discovery on my part, I find, at least in my opinion. If you want to see how to do that, one of my very first tutorials on this channel was actually about that very topic, so check that out for a bit more on how you can make a flag like that yourself. So the next group of figures are not really an army per se. They were created for a ninja stealth game that Wargame Soldiers and Strategy put on at Salute a few years back. So the player took the role of a ninja character that had to sneak around a Japanese village and accomplish various tasks. So you've got here some figures that are villagers, some that are like ninjas, some that are ashigaru, some that are samurai, and then some thugs as well, and then various sort of other random things in there a bit. Most of the models I used were by Perry, and I also created a complete custom 4x4 Japanese village skirmish board with a castle and everything to go along with this. That was also a huge amount of work. Maybe I'll show that in another video. I don't know. This was the last major project I took on before starting the YouTube channel, so my painting is at a pretty high level here. And I got a lot of practice here, especially with doing patterns. I really improved, I think, my brush control and my ability to paint detail because that's a big part of a lot of Japanese models. So, and I had a huge amount of fun painting this. I think I painted each figure one by one here, so it was not like I was doing a production line with a whole group of figures at once. Like on some of the units I painted earlier, I would completely finish each model before moving on to the next one. So this has been a really brief look at some of the various wargaming forces I've painted myself over the years. It's obviously not everything I've done. There's some other bits and pieces along the way that I didn't include, but these are the sort of the big projects that I've painted myself. And I hope you find this useful to see kind of where I've coming from, see how my style and painting has evolved over the years, and kind of just see how I tackle larger groups of models. If you enjoyed this, of course, please like it, share it, leave me comments or questions if you have any, and let me know if there's some other things you want to see more about that I can make a video on. And of course, don't forget to subscribe as well if you haven't already, because that always helps. So that's all for this week, and I'll see you next time.